We've sort of focused on the broader picture of the CPL to start. And with these hangouts, sometimes we have a certain player or coach where the conversation is very narrowly focused on one club for an hour. With the commissioner, we're lucky and able to talk about more than one club. In fact, we're going to get to all the clubs right now. So we've asked Kurt and Ollie to come up with one question per club that we're going to pose to the commissioner. We'll start on the West Coast, and we'll start with you, Ollie, with your question on Pacific.
Yeah, Pacific FC. So there's a lot to like here at West Hill Stadium, and the look and feel of it, the new stand, the size of the stadium now, and also the overall investment in that community that's happening. It's probably one of the leading clubs in your league as in those terms. However, there is this one persisting issue, which is the hydro pole at West Hill Stadium and how that impacts the broadcast of games. So I just wondered if there was any update on that and how you've looked at solving that problem.
So interestingly enough, before in February, we were out and we met with the mayor. We've talked with the premier in the past. We're actively working to improve that. We had Media Pro Oscar Lopez, the CEO, was with us as well. So we've been very clear that we have to fix this problem because it does affect broadcast and obviously the look and feel of the game. They've committed to make changes not only to lighting but also to try and find this pole. The problem with the pole is it's a pretty big move, but they've committed to get changed all over. I don't know, but we know that that's a key thing for us. Canada Soccer was going to take. And they also said the same thing. So they gave the same feedback to the city. It's not really the club; it's the city that controls it, and of course the province, because the province. I don't know if you know this, but they own the right of way on those poles. So it's partly the premier that has to kind of push buttons as well. And then of course you've got BC Hydro. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one. Having said that, we're looking at different ways that we can make it better, and then how do we make the permanent change there? But they know it has to be done because otherwise the league has got to put their we've got to draw a line in the sand, so to speak, here and say, look, this has got to get fixed, or we're going to have to move the situation. And
I think
I will be honest with you, the city of Langford and Mayor Stu out there, Stu Young, they've been fantastic and they are very supportive and they want to get this done. This is not about them trying to slow it down.
Yeah.
the only people that would seriously complain about a permanent relocation of that hydro pole is a certain very active Twitter account that may have to change its name. Okay, let's move a little bit east. Kurt, a question from you from the team on your hat.
Yeah, shout out to the Hydropole blog. Yeah, so it's, moving on to Calvary. Really interesting club, Commissioner. A club that is backed by fantastic ownership, as you know. In terms of the ambition rankings of this league, I see Calvary as having just an immense amount of runway to move to another level, to move to CPL 2.0 and then 3.0 faster than anybody. What can we expect from them just in terms of improving the ground? Is there further investment to come in a training facility on site at Spruce Meadows? I mean, how much does that excite you that you have a group like that it seems could take this league to another level within the next few years, just given the level of investment and who they have backing them?
Yeah, I think, there's no doubt. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, the Southern family, under the leadership of Linda Heathcock, they have shown the propensity to be prepared to spend the money, Kurt, as they need to here, right? They put a tremendous amount of investment into Spruce Meadows to bring together what I thought was one of the unique kind of places to go and watch a game. Like, I mean, it was. The games that I was out there was lots of people there. It was entertaining, and it was entertaining before and after the match, and during the match, and at halftime when you wanted to get up and walk around. So they've got a great spot. I think in talking with them, they've got lots of runway. They've got a tremendous amount of land. We know that, so they can do whatever they want. I think it'll be when do they want to do that? Right now they have enough, right, and so. I don't know that relationship where it stands and how that would be affected financially. So, but they have lots of runway. They are an extremely ambitious club. I think that it starts and stops at the top, both with Linda, but also Ian Allison and of course Tommy Wheeldon. I mean, Tommy is a winner. Like he is. There's no second place for Tommy. There's first, and then there's everybody else. And so you got to love that, because in sports, that's what it's all about. Like, no one remembers who finished the second; they only remember who wins, right? And so he's got that attitude. He's got a good system that he has with the club. As you can see, he's taken and made some changes into the club this year. He's building on success, right? And so yeah, I expect him to do very well. I mean, I don't think people thought that any of our clubs would beat an MLS team, and they of course were the first to do that.
Mhm.
We'll try and get to some of our YouTube questions and Twitter questions after we go coast to coast. So just a reminder, if you do have any questions that we haven't already addressed for the commissioner, we welcome them. We'll try and get as many of them in as possible. So use the YouTube chat, use Twitter, and our producers will send along any pertinent ones in a short while. But let's get back to the CPL coast to coast questions. To Ollie, your question on the other Albertan side with FC Edmonton.
Yeah, so this is a club I have a bit of a soft spot for. I think Jeff Paulus really cares about that community and bringing through young players into the first team. However, if I'm being completely honest with you, Commissioner, I think that stadium in Edmonton has maybe fallen behind the standards that have been set elsewhere in the league last year. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think that club can kind of grow its attendances going forwards?
Yeah, there's no doubt it needs some work, and the cities we've had some discussions with them. There's unfortunately not a lot of cities are stepping up and doing what they're doing in Langford these days, right? And so there's work that has to be done there. I do believe that the structure of that stadium is good, but it needs to be just done a little bit better. And to me, it's a perfect example of what modular type building how it can enhance a field that's already the structure that already has a structure that has. I mean, grandstand is there, but it needs work. Better on the other side. These are all things that Tom Fath recognizes, and so we're working on that. We'll have to work on that in the future. But right now, I need more fans in the stands. Right, we need more supporters there. So that's the big thing, Oliver. But no, I'm not going to sit here and disagree with you. I'd like to get more people out and even better experience there. I've been to a few games there where it's been a lot of fun, but we need more of that. And I think Tom and Jeff Paulus would say the same thing.
Yeah.
Mentioned earlier, Commissioner, that there are 3 clubs playing in a CFL building, and it's a brand new league isn't just going to grab the heart of a community in first year, second year, maybe even 5 years. It takes time to build that. But I know Kurt was wondering about our first club that plays in a CFL venue with Valor.
Yeah, so Winnipeg surprised me, to be honest, this year. Rob Gale had been building it up as all the interest out there, and I got to admit, I didn't believe him. But when the season rolled around, there were some nights there that there were 8,000 fans, and it looked really good on the broadcast, and you could tell there was energy in the building. So what is it's the same kind of question for Forge. Like what does it take to get a Valor to that next level, to get that additional fan base? Is it just a matter of results? What are the challenges maybe they're facing right now in Winnipeg?
Well, I think a lot of it, Kurt, has to do with it has to do with results, right? Let's be honest. I thought, knowing Rob Gale and his staff, and knowing some of the players he brought in, I was expecting much more out of them. And they ran into a dry spell there and it went on a long time. And that really hurt things a lot, right? Now, granted, they still had lots of fans there, and they were entertaining games. The games that I was there to see Valor play, they were entertaining games. But they can do more for sure. There's lots of interest in football or soccer in Winnipeg and in that area, call it the general area around that in Manitoba. So they have the opportunity. They've got a good fan base and a following. They've got an excellent organization that's their parent, being the Blue Bombers. They are also, they're on a winning roll, right, with the Bombers. So, I think it boils down to you got to win more games, right? When you win more games, that's going to follow, and you keep building it. There's a lot of seats in that stadium, so it takes time.
Yeah, I was gonna follow up on that, and it was one of the people have been talking about this in Major League Soccer since the beginning. Is can a club survive in such a big stadium? And I think the answer is yes, just based on what I've seen at Forge and Valor. Because I think even if you get 10,000 fans into those venues, it's actually a quite a good atmosphere, right? So were you satisfied in those questions being answered? I mean, the first leg of the final at Tim Hortons Field, the environment inside there was fantastic, I felt.
Yeah, you've got to build towards that, right? Like at the end of the day, if they're getting 4, 5, 6,000 people, that's fine. But we've got to get to the 8 and the 10, right? And
Yeah.
if you can consistently get up there in those numbers, and the clubs know that, that's what they're after. But you have to build that. You have to earn it. I mean, how many years did it take the MLS to figure it out, right? That sometimes playing in these big stadiums, as much as it can be an advantage, you get all the amenities and everything else. The disadvantage is there's a lot of seats there, right? So it'll work really hard to do it. So even the clubs are looking at how do we position everybody, how do we get the fans to sit together, is it better to do that versus being spread out through the stadium, those types of things. But yeah, it's there's great advantages to being part of those stadiums. Then the other side of it is you got to work your tail off to make them fill up, because let's be honest, you go to Halifax with HFX Wanderers and you look at that small stadium, and with 6,000 to 6,500 people in there, I mean it's the best night out you're going to have.
It's interesting you bring up Halifax, because that was the club we were going to go to next. And Ollie's got a question. We talked about expansion a little bit earlier, but Ollie wants to push this message just a bit in a different direction.
Sure.
Yeah, so we've talked about Halifax plenty, just the success story it's been for this league, and maybe surprising in some ways compared to other markets. I want to ask, how much does Halifax as a market kind of become almost a checklist for you when you're assessing new expansion markets? And what are the key things that you think have worked there?
Well, I certainly, when I look at Halifax, I think the greater Halifax area is about 500,000 people. So population, you can check the box on population a little bit there. It kind of gives you an idea. And in some of the work that we've done with some of the folks out of Accelerate Sports in the U.S. that do a lot of the USL and a lot of the MLS type work for them, they talk about this catchment area of about 500,000 people is kind of the sweet spot, 4 to 500,000, right? Halifax does that. They also Derek Martin and his crew there have done an excellent job of building a community organization. So when you look at that, they not that any of the other clubs haven't, but there's no doubt that the supporters group and the fans in Halifax, they have embraced that. Now, they don't have the other professional sports that some of the other cities have, but the reality is they've done a great job at it. You walk in the downtown area, if you're out in the malls in Halifax, you hear people having discussions walking in front of you about the Wanderers. Mm-hmm. Those are things when you check the boxes, you start to see that type of thing. And they also, if you look at, I went around to all the clubs and said, okay, talk to me about all the community activation that you've done for 2019. And Halifax, HFX Wanderers, I mean, it was 4 or 5 pages long, the amount of work that they did. They fully embraced the fact that their players had to be out in the market and out in the public, talking to people, visiting hospitals, doing the right things. I had somebody said to me who lives out there that I know, obviously I know a lot of people out there through Hortons days, but they said to me, Dave, there's not a weekend that doesn't go by that I don't see players in uniform in the malls, yeah, in the city, right? So they've taken it seriously. It's more than just, you have to build the club, not just on the pitch, but you got to do it off the pitch as well. And it's everything you do. So I think they've done a lot of that. So Oliver, to answer your question, they are a very good blueprint for, and especially for what we want to do in Canada. And the opportunity is, how do you then take a modular stadium, maybe up it a few notches, and how do you use that to morph to, go from a 6,500, how do you get into then 8,500 to 10 to 12,000, right? Let's, when you look at European football, you know this, but when you look at European football, once you get past the big 5 or 6, the next stage down, like when number 7, the average attendance is about 10 or 11,000.
Right.
You're into Portugal, you're into Sweden, you're into Scotland, you're into Turkey, places like that, right? That are in that range. That's their average, right? Yeah. And some of them are dragged up by big clubs that perennially go to Champions League, right? And are playing in Europe. So we know where the target is, and that's we have to work towards that. So I think Halifax gives us an opportunity to model it, understand it, blueprint clubs coming in.
Mhm.
Carrying on the conversation of community support and facilities with the York 9 situation. And Kurt, this one goes to you.
Yeah, York 9 I hold close to my heart just because I see the possibilities up in that region just with all the soccer that's played and the love of the game. Obviously, in year one, I believe they finished bottom in attendance. But what I know is that different markets need different things, and we've seen it south of the border and the way MLS has gone about growing and doing different things in different markets. And some of those markets, for instance, maybe at Kansas City, where I grew up, it took building a new venue to really revitalize that club. And now they have 20,000 fans at every single game, whereas 10 years ago, they had 8,000 fans at every game, if that, at Arrowhead Stadium, the NFL stadium. So I guess my question is when York 9 was announced, it was talked about that, a stadium plan was in place 3 to 5 years down the road. Do you think that is what is needed in that market, is to have a 10,000 seat venue or whatever it is to rally around and really show that marketplace that the team is there to stay and it's real and here's our home. Not to take anything away from York Lions Stadium and that venue, but is it going to take moving somewhere else to really jumpstart things there?
So my personal reaction to that, Kurt, is that the very first thing we need to do is, and I think the guys at York 9 would say this, stepped a little bit in the way that they approach the community and how to go about creating fans, right? And so that's a big issue. So with Angus McNabb coming in there now, who's a footballer, who understands it from a business perspective, he's got a lot of different ideas about how to create, it to be that kind of, games at York 9 should be, that should be an event. People, they've got to think about, oh yeah, we're going, that's where we're going, right? That's our, making it a tradition. He's done some great stuff from a social media perspective, reconnecting with the communities up there. There's no shortage of population. There's no shortage of fans, but the connection has to be there, right? And so they've doubled down on a lot of that. I was really looking at, and I'm looking forward to see what they can do this year to move that needle, because I too, like you, it's near and dear to my heart as well. I'm a season ticket holder there, right?
Yeah.
I'm up there with my boys all the time. So I like the venue. Like, the venue's not the biggest issue. You are right in that there will come a point in time, if you got to the point of where you were with Sporting KC and you were at 8,000 fans, then that could be the bigger issue, right? But I don't think we're there. Like, if we get to that, 6,000-7,000 fans there, then that could be an issue, but not until then. I think we need to create a tradition, make it a destination. If you remember, I know we all watched it. I was in the stadium when they tied 2-2 with Montreal Impact, the eventual Canadian Championship winners, on that night. I think it was a Wednesday night. I think it was, but I was standing there watching that game, and when we were, I noticed we were winning 2-1. I mean, as my grandmother would say, my arse was making buttons. Like seriously, I couldn't believe this was about to happen. But we remember the atmosphere in that stadium, right? And so we could have been on the moon. It didn't matter. Everybody was there. Everybody was engaged. Everybody was literally, our hearts were at our throats, right? So I think you can achieve that. And then it's Kurt, to your point, how do you get it to the next level after that, right? And so I think we're both saying the same things. Mine is maybe just will take a little bit longer to get to where you want to go.
Commissioner, just a quick one from me as a season's ticket holder. Are you going to miss Yorkie?
When they no, I'm not actually. That's enough. When they came up with the cartoon to Yorkie Went Home, I thought, okay, there's some young person is brilliant there. So.
Yeah, I think everyone across the league gave him a round of applause for that. All right, Oliver, to you and to Forge.
Probably loved it the most. He probably was happy that Yorkie went home more than anybody.
I'm not that big a fan of mascots, but.
All right. Flat, over to you and Forge.
Yeah, so this is a theme we've touched upon talking about Valor and some of the other clubs we've already spoken about. But I guess if you can just expand on how you think a club like Forge can go from that crowd size of maybe 5 to 7,000 and get to that next level of 8 to 10, and how quickly that could happen.
I think it really boils down to, Oliver, they have to continue to do the work in the community. That's
Mhm.
what has to happen here, right? It's tough work, right? You got to get it done, but the way you get it done is through the community, and it's not about it's engaging with the community, and especially the soccer community, Hamilton, Wentworth, and everything that's around there. There's a tremendous amount of soccer playing there. It's got to be a family event. It's got to be something make it's that family tradition, similar to what they've achieved with the Ticats over 100 years, right?
Mhm.
Or however long it's been. But so it's doable. They have a great facility, but they've got to get people there. It doesn't hurt that they won last year.
Yes, yeah.
Right? It doesn't hurt that they won last year. So I think immediately it ups the interest level. And if you watch what the club is doing now around the community, they're doing quite a bit there now, and they need to do more. Bobby knows this. Costa knows this. Matt Afnick knows it. Like, I'm very clear about this. Everyone has to do more when it comes to engaging, right? And I put it as much on the players as anybody.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, when you're playing in this league, you've decided to be a professional. In this league, you really are. You've taken on an apprenticeship. You're honing your skills, and your skills just aren't on the pitch. You are building a brand for yourself, and you're building yourself into a professional. You have to understand what goes into that, and I think the league's learning that as a whole, and the players are learning it as well.